It is Sunday, the 15th of July, 2018. I'm in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, just starting up my alternative spiritual practice of protesting against Unitarian Universalist injustices, abuses, and hypocrisy, which include, but are not limited to, the sexual abuse of children by Unitarian Universalist ministers and Unitarian Universalist Sunday school teachers, to say nothing of ordinary Unitarian Universalist lay people such as Richard Buell of First Parish Norwell in Massachusetts, and also the cover-up and the denial of sexual abuse of children by the Unitarian Universalist Association in Boston and various other Unitarian Universalist ministers and leaders and many Montreal Unitarians. So, as a spiritual community, Montreal Unitarians welcome and nurture clergy abuse, which includes the sexual abuse of children, by not doing anything about it and even trying to conceal it. And they certainly inspired this protest, and they challenged my right to engage in it in various ways, some of which are unethical and immoral and borderline criminal and even actually criminal. And they take action in the world in ways that are, once again, immoral, unethical, borderline criminal, and actually criminal. Say nothing of batshit crazy. So we'll see what happens today. It looks pretty quiet so far. I laid down a few chalk slogans saying Unitarian cover up and deny sexual abuse of children, such as that one there, and another one over there, and one down the road a bit. So basically got three chalk slogans saying the same thing here: Unitarians cover up and deny sexual abuse of children, which is entirely true. They conceal it in various ways, but they even outright deny it in various ways, and perhaps the most outrageous way in which the Unitarian Universalist Association has outright denied the sexual abuse of children, specifically by Unitarian Universalist ministers, are the following words from an apology to victims of clergy sexual misconduct that Unitarian Universalist Association moderator Jim Key delivered to thousands of Unitarian Universalists at the 2014 annual General Assembly of Unitarian Universalists in Providence, Rhode Island. Jim Key delivered his first moderator's report to General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association, I believe on June 28th of 2014 or thereabouts. And in the middle of his moderator's report, he inserted what was supposed to be an official UUA board apology to victims of clergy sexual misconduct committed by Unitarian Universalist ministers. This apology essentially minimized the extent and seriousness of clergy sexual misconduct in general, but it outright denied any sexual abuse of children with the following words from Jim Key: "There were no incidents of abuse of children or elders in my investigations." That's a pretty well exact word-for-word quote from Jim Key's worthless, in my opinion, apology to victims of clergy sexual misconduct. So he essentially was claiming that he had personally investigated clergy sexual misconduct within the Unitarian Universalist religious community, and in his own personal investigations of clergy sexual misconduct, he found zero evidence of any sexual abuse of children committed by Unitarian Universalist ministers. This is a brazen, bald-faced lie, because I personally told Jim Key about some cases where some Unitarian Universalist ministers were charged, tried, and convicted of the sexual abuse of children, sentenced to jail terms. Most notably, Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell of the Northborough and Westborough Unitarian Universalist churches in Massachusetts was charged, tried, and convicted of the forcible rape and even the unnatural rape of teenage Tibetan refugees. And good morning. And these refugees were at least basically 16 years old for sure at the times when the rapes began. In one case, they continued on for years. In one case, the victim only escaped from the clutches of Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell when she was in her early 20s. So she'd basically been used as a sex slave by Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell for at least 4 or 5 years until she finally got away from him and reported his activities to some members of his church, who did the right thing and reported what they were told to the police. In other words, the victim herself did not make the initial police report. She confided in church members of one of Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell's parishes, one being Westborough, the other being Northborough. And basically it was, I think, a few women and possibly 1 or 2 males, but I think it was mostly women who were basically board members of the church in question. They were informed of, what was going on, and they thought the correct thing to do was to report what they were told to the police, and that led to the arrest of Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell on charges of rape, and he was convicted, sentenced to 8 years in jail, and got out after 4. So basically he spent fewer years in jail than he spent raping at least one of the teenage Tibetan refugees. And then there are other cases of sexual abuse of children by Unitarian Universalist ministers that it can be properly described as child molestation, pedophilia. So we're talking about sexual abuse of children who were younger than 16 years old, most likely even prepubescent. There were cases, again, where ministers were charged, tried, convicted, sentenced to jail terms. And they cannot be named for various reasons right now. It's certainly possible to identify them, but for various reasons, they cannot be named right now. And then there's the very recent case of Reverend Ronald Eugene Robinson, a Christian Unitarian Universalist minister, who was basically charged with child porn activities, and who acknowledged that he had fantasies of raping and killing very young children. So it wasn't just sexual fantasies, it was also murder fantasies. He pleaded guilty, so he avoided a trial, but he was nonetheless guilty of effectively what would be called pedophilia, and at least fantasizing about raping and killing children. To be fair, this case came to light after Jim Key's apology, in which he denied any sexual abuse of children by Unitarian Universalist ministers, but nonetheless the fact remains that Jim Key knew of some cases of sexual abuse of children and was certainly in a position to know about any and all cases of sexual abuse of children committed by Unitarian Universalist ministers prior to lying about sexual abuse of children in his worthless official UUA board apology to victims of clergy sexual misconduct, which he delivered at the General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association. As I said, I believe it was June 28th of 2014, not that long ago, just over 4 years ago. And I should say that I anticipated that he would deliver basically a second-rate, inadequate, expedient apology that would try to put everything behind, move forward without any real consequences or any real justice. And so I actually warned UU Safety Net, that's a group or was a group in Nashville, Tennessee, that ostensibly was there to provide a safety net to victims of clergy sexual misconduct. So I warned them, even before Jim Key delivered this apology, that I expected this to happen, although I never expected him to go as far as he did in terms of outright lying and outright basically minimizing everything. I didn't expect him to minimize things as much as he did, and I certainly didn't expect him to outright lie about sexual abuse of children. That was a surprise even to me, but I did expect him to deliver an apology that was mostly an expedient attempt to just put everything behind, put it in the past, and not really deal with the past clergy sexual misconduct, not provide any real justice to past victims, and move forward, kind of thing. I told them, that first of all, I told them they shouldn't accept any such apology if such an apology is delivered. And I even suggested that they try to vet the apology before he delivered it. In other words, basically have Jim run his apology by them, or his proposed apology by them, before he delivered it, so that they could suggest improvements if it needed any improvements. Well, that obviously didn't happen. So anyhow, the worst part is that even after Jim Key brazenly lied about the sexual abuse of children in this apology, UU Safety Net did absolutely nothing to speak out against these lies. They basically, I don't know if they officially accepted the apology in any kind of official way, but they in no way condemned it. They in no way criticized it. They allowed it to pass without any criticism. I'm narrating to my camera, sir, don't worry. So, guys looking back, probably thought I was talking to him. That does happen occasionally. So, anyhow, I got some people coming this way. Just make sure this thing's still running. Oh yeah, it has been overheating a bit in the hot weather. It doesn't help. But this particular camera does have a tendency to overheat and shut off, even in moderate weather. Hello, good morning. So, a couple just walked by. And there's a affirmative honk. An affirmative honk from a passerby in a car. So, we shall continue to circulate here. So far I've seen very, very few people show up to attend this morning's service. In terms of what I've seen, it's only 2 or 3. Although there may have been some others I didn't see when I was laying down the chalk and so on, but so far pretty low attendance, as can be seen by the fact there's just one bicycle in the bike rack. But let's see what time it is. We'll see how close we are to the service. Well, 10:09, service starts in 21 minutes. So, of course, there's always stragglers. You know, Unitarians don't take their religion too seriously, so lots of people who show up after the service has begun. Well, I wouldn't say lots, but because there's not lots who show up, period. But you know, a certain percentage of Montreal Unitarians are habitually late, shall we say. Not really all that concerned about showing up on time. Probably coming more for the coffee hour and socializing after the service than the service itself. Nonetheless, this is a pretty low turnout today. Last Sunday, the bike rack was pretty full before the service began. But I've had you know, somebody who was at a service recently, I believe 2 weeks ago, or no, maybe it was I think it was actually last Sunday's service, told me that there was about 20 to 30 people attending, which really isn't very many when you think about it. And he wasn't very impressed. He is a French student, i.e. French from France, studying political science and law. I believe studying law is a prerequisite for studying political science. Anyway, he encountered me 2 weeks ago, and you know, I was explaining the protest to him and this and that, and I actually encouraged him to go in, and he didn't have time, so he didn't. But he went the next Sunday, as I was basically being harassed and berated by one of the church ladies, which he saw. And he went in and he attended the service, and he wrote a little review on his Facebook page. Wasn't a very positive review, really. I don't think he was very favorably impressed with the Unitarian Church of Montreal, and he certainly wasn't impressed with the fact that the church in general, Unitarian Universalism, you know, as a religious community,